Okay, I'm ready to retell the story number one. Last month, he and his wife finally went on vacation, and the two of them hadn't traveled for more than 2 years. So, as soon as they got a chance to get away from it all, including work, kids, and everyday routine, they just packed their bags and decided to go abroad. So they left New York, and first it was hard for them to choose the destinations that would suit both of them. But they talked a lot and thought things over, and finally they agreed that this time it would be China. His wife has Chinese roots. Her great grandmother came to the US from China and married an American citizen. So she wanted to learn some more about Chinese culture, tracing her family history. A couple of her relatives live in Shanghai, and they wanted to pay them a visit. At first, he wasn't very enthusiastic about going there, but after he did a little research on the internet and read about China's nature wonders and historical landmarks, he was fascinated by the beauty that it offers. He also wanted to try authentic Chinese food, and so finally the choice was made, and they set off for China. They usually opt into ready-made package tours, but this time they decided to plan their trip without any tour operators to have more freedom and flexibility. So they bought the tickets online and booked the hotel rooms. First, they were planning to go to the China's capital to spend a few days there, then to set off for Shanghai to visit his wife's relatives, and then to return to Beijing, and only then the plane would take them back home to America. So, for an American citizen to go to China, you have to get visa. So they filled in the application form, got an insurance, and applied for multiple entry visas. So they got their visas, and now they are valid till 2028. That means that they don't have to extend them for another 10 years, and it's great because they were going to visit China again. They were rather nervous the night before their flight, and they left their kids with their grandparents and asked their friend to take care of their dog. So Jessica spent hours packing the bags and suitcases, making sure that she could put everything that they need. So they had the medicines and the clothes and shoes for any kind of weather and occasion. So traveling light was never an option, and he always has a problem falling asleep the night before the flight. So he stayed up late reading a China guide. The next morning, they woke up late, so they got dressed in a hurry, skipped their breakfast, and hailed the taxi to the airport. And they were afraid to be held up in traffic and miss the plane. But when they arrived at the airport, it turned out that they had nothing to worry about. All the flights were delayed due to the severe storm, and for the next few hours they were sitting in a cafe, drinking coffee and waiting for the storm to be over. So at last they checked in for the flight flight and got their boarding passes. They had to pay for extra luggage after they weighed their suitcases, and they had to get in lines going through the airport security. They checked their bags if they had any prohibited items in their carry-on bags. Jessica had a bottle of perfume that wasn't allowed on board the ship, and they had to throw it away. So they proceeded to the boarding gate, and they were waiting for the boarding call. So finally, they got on a plane 4 hours later than scheduled, and the flight lasted for over 13 hours. Luckily, they didn't have an aisle seat. Jessica was sitting next to the window, and he was sitting just next to her. And she was watching the comedy series on her tablet, and he was reading a Chinese phrase book. They arrived in Beijing, went through the customs and immigration, and claimed their bags at the carousel. First, they considered renting a car to get to the city center, but they were too exhausted after the long flight, and moreover, driving in a foreign country seems very stressful and risky. So finally, they just got a taxi to their hotel. They checked in at the reception, but there was a little problem, some misunderstanding, and moreover, the receptionist wasn't very good at English. Luckily, he had his phrase book with him, and he managed to explain that they had made a reservation for a double room on Booking.com, and it turned out that they misprinted their names, but the problem was fixed quite soon. So he paid for the room by credit card, and then they went to the city center to withdraw some money, and they wanted to explore the area. So the next few days flew by. For the first couple of days, they were jet lagged, but then they got used to the time zone, and they hired a tour guide to show them the city. They visited some famous attractions and tried out local food. They attended some museums. Then they took a high-speed train from Beijing to Shanghai to visit his wife's relatives, and they turned out to be very nice and hospitable people. So they enjoyed a city tour, and they had some excursions to the nearby villages. They were looking around on their own, trying to avoid some popular tourist destination because they wanted to explore some exotic places. They tried out delicious spicy food and visited one of the famous giant panda conservation centers. They took a lot of pictures, and Jessica made some videos for her YouTube channel. So the vacation lasted for 2 weeks, and they met some new people, and they were happy to escape from the everyday routine. So he highly recommends to go there and see everything with your own eyes.